Hey everybody, Kitwalski here, checking in with another one of our hashtag Star Trek discussions videos. Today we're going to be talking about an idea that's been kicking around in my head for quite a while that I've been really itching to kind of engage in a larger conversation about because it's something that I think people aren't really talking about in a lot of ways. So with that being said, today we're going to be talking about the idea of Star Trek as a cinematic universe. And how it transcends not just being a franchise with crossovers, and really, in my opinion, was the very first successful attempt at being a cinematic universe that Marvel has then duplicated and actually, I would say, perfected in a lot of ways, and avoiding a lot of the pitfalls that Star Trek fell into. So before we jump into my justification as to why I think Star Trek is a CU, cinematic universe, and all of those things, I want to define a few things so that we all have context for this discussion down in the comments below, so we're all on the same page with what it is that I am talking about, so we know what's going on. So first thing I want to define is what is a franchise that has crossovers. Broadly speaking, a franchise is a group of related media centered around a single original creative work. Really good examples of this are Harry Potter, Lord of the Rings, Jurassic Park, and The Matrix. These are all franchises that have essentially are just movies with sequels attached to them. They exist within the same universe. They're all directly connected to a singular event, and they're all connected really through a much more structured backbone than, say, a much more broader sense, like something that you would experience in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. The idea then that you have franchises that also have spin-offs and crossovers. Now, say for instance, Deadpool, the movie Deadpool, is a spin-off of the X-Men franchise that has existed for, over a decade. And then you also have movies like The Scorpion King that is a spin-off of the Mummy franchise. These don't exactly correlate to being a cinematic universe. They're just simple one-off things that happened just to be related to a previous film or television show or various media, whatever that may be. So when two or more franchises connect in a single event, that is what is known as a crossover. Two good examples of this are Freddy vs. Jason and Aliens vs. Predator. Those things occurred within the confines of those franchises, connecting very temporarily and then separating again. They don't exist perpetually inside of their inside of a conjoined environment, and that's the key word here, is perpetually. So the next thing I want to go ahead, now that we've kind of talked about what a franchise is, I think that's pretty easy to understand. I want to define what a cinematic universe is. The big kicker piece is just the word perpetual. They're perpetually linked. They're constantly sharing continuity, sharing settings, sharing actors, sharing events, sharing all sorts of different things, inside jokes. They reference each other. They are affected by one another in great ways. That's the difference between a franchise and a cinematic universe. And this whole thing is an amalgamation of different definitions that I was able to put together through various Reddit sites and websites and different movie blogs and all these different things. It's really kind of hard to pinpoint exactly what this definition is because it's essentially a buzzword is what a lot of people would call it. But since the MCU has become this big popular thing and everyone praises Marvel for doing it the first, doing it right, and making it perfect, it irks me because, in my opinion, Star Trek was in fact the first cinematic universe. I think the STCU was, the OG cinematic universe, and I'm going to explain why. But before I do, I do want to go ahead and say that I also talked to several other Star Trek YouTubers and got their inputs and ideas and feelings in regards to having Star Trek being labeled as a cinematic universe. And we are by no means an authority on Star Trek or what it can be defined as or anything like that. And to be honest, the majority of those guys disagreed with my assessment that it would be a cinematic universe. They still want to call it a franchise. So with that being said, I just want to throw that out there because I don't want you guys to sit here and think that this is a super biased video and I'm just making it only about what my opinion is. The whole point of this is to bring in the discussion. I really want to talk about this because it's something that's on my mind and I really want to have a good chat with all of you Trekkies, part of the Ketwalski crew, about. So, in my mind, Star Trek is defined as a cinematic universe because I view Star Trek at the top. Star Trek is the brand. That's the Marvel. That's where these things are existing. All of the franchises are the individual shows that exist in there. Your TOS, TNG, DS9, Voyager, Enterprise, Discovery. All of those with their subsequent films are the individual franchises that perpetually link and share settings and continuity. Within these individual franchises, I was able to kind of get a rough cut of 47 specific instances where the actors appeared in other shows or films portraying their characters and affecting the continuity of the entirety of Star Trek with whatever that they were doing. This doesn't include the throwaway lines, the references, the Easter eggs, the fact that Worf was a main character on TNG and DS9, the fact that you have all sorts of different villains that transcend the different franchises that connect everything together as well. And, you know, you're also talking about a situation where the movies directly reference things that happened in the shows, from Voyager affecting things in First Contact, and First Contact affecting things in Enterprise. All of these things are perpetually linked and perpetually setting up different things within its own continuity that's all shared together. I view all of these things as the original Star Trek cinematic universe. I know the word cinematic seems to imply that they're only talking specifically about films, but I would argue that the Marvel CU, the MCU, includes all of those shows that they have produced on Netflix: Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., Daredevil, Punisher, you know, and all the other ones whose names, January Jones, you know, Jessica Jones, sorry, not January Jones, but, you know, Luke Cage and all those guys, and the Iron Fist dude whose show I don't know because I never watched it, but those are shows that exist also with the movies. Star Trek was just inverted a little bit, where it was the shows first and then it was the movies. So there's more heavy on the shows and light on the movies, as opposed to Marvel, which is the opposite. So I think that these things are directly related. I think it's a very easy assumption to sit there and say, okay, looking at the definition of what a franchise is, again, that's a self-contained story that has a central backbone that's essentially just movie sequels, and those can branch out with some spin-offs that are one-offs and some crossovers that are also one-offs. It's the perpetual shared setting and continuity that creates the concept of the cinematic universe, which, in my opinion, is in fact Star Trek. So that's my definition of it. That's my justification for it. I think Marvel has taken the Star Trek formula for cinematic universe and perfected it in a lot of ways. They were able to use a wide range of characters and all sorts of different things to kind of keep the things fresh. I think Star Trek as a whole franchise, you know, as a cinematic universe, as an entity, began to peter out because it was a crew and they were fighting aliens and it was always war and there was always a thing and there was a MacGuffin and they had to punch the bad guy, and it kind of teetered itself out, and now we're back to where we are currently, which is with just Discovery. So I think Marvel learned a lot of lessons from what Star Trek did right and what they did wrong, and took that and moved on, and now have created a very successful, perfected formula for a cinematic universe. But it bothers me. I know it's just, you know, some jamoke on the internet complaining, but it bothers me that Star Trek isn't considered the first cinematic universe. We're the first on a lot of things, Star Trek is. And I say we as if I own Star Trek or I'm a part of the ownership of Star Trek, but it means a lot to me. Star Trek means a lot to me. That's why I run this channel, and it feels slighted that people skip over Star Trek. A lot of people skip over Star Trek, and especially nowadays as just that weird science fiction show. So I want to be able to recognize Star Trek for all the things that it's done to influence both pop culture and cinema and TV and all that stuff. I would also throw a caveat at the end of this as well, or not a caveat, but an extra add-on, which is Star Wars, in my opinion, has also now become a cinematic universe. You have Star Wars at the top with the saga films, and now that they've started popping out those one-off, Star Wars story films, I think it's now become a cinematic universe because those characters are perpetually linked to all the things happening within the sagas, and they're constantly influencing one another. But that's a conversation for another day. I just wanted to throw that in there too, because I'm sure some folks are going to be asking me that in the comments as to how do I feel about Star Wars, because I hadn't mentioned it up to this point. And I'm also wearing my Star Wars shirt. So with all of that being said, I know I threw a lot at you guys and gals today. I want to engage in this conversation. I want to hear what you have to say and what you think. Do you think my justification is right? Do you think Star Trek is a cinematic universe and we did it first? Do you think it matters at all? Do you think it's not and it's just a franchise with essentially just spin-offs of each other and a few crossover episodes? I'm curious to hear what all of you guys and gals think about this. I want to get this discussion jiving out. So if you enjoyed this video, please throw a like and subscribe up on YouTube, follow me on Twitter, Facebook, and all that jazz. And be sure to comment down below to get this thing going. And I will see all of you guys and gals next time. Live long and prosper, my Trekkies!